The deafening roar of armored vehicles cuts through the silence of dawn on October 28, 2025, transforming the north zone of Rio de Janeiro, specifically the Complexo da Penha, into a stage for urban warfare of unprecedented proportions. What unfolded that day was not just another routine police incursion, but the realization of a cold, calculated military strategy designed to nullify decades of tactical advantage enjoyed by organized crime. The public security agents, comprising a contingent of thousands of men from the Shock Police Battalion, Recom, Civil Police, and Military Police, were not moving in a routine occupation operation, but executing a complex plan whose primary objective was not immediate territorial takeover, but the creation of a sophisticated deception. They knew that in every previous confrontation, the armed leaders held an escape card, a natural sanctuary that guaranteed their survival and regrouping. This time, however, the state refused to repeat the known script and was determined to turn the criminals' only escape route into their final trap, a corridor of death meticulously prepared by the most relentless special forces in the country. This operation redefined the concept of containment in a favela environment, signaling a drastic shift in the approach to urban conflict. The history of security operations in Complexo da Penha and the adjacent Vila Cruzeiro has always faced the same geographical obstacle: the imposing Serra da Misericórdia, Misericordia mountain range, an area of dense forest, treacherous trails, and difficult monitoring, which serves as a strategic bridge to the Complexo do Alemão. In November 2010, and repeatedly in subsequent years, the mass escape of dozens of armed men through the mountain range became an iconic image of the temporary impotence of security forces, a symbol of the constant challenge posed by the rugged topography. The criminals trusted this path blindly, considering it an instinctive and safe refuge to disorganize under police pressure. The 2025 containment operation, however, was born from the exhaustive analysis of this pattern, concluding that to win the urban war, it was not enough to take the alleys, but to cut the only lifeline that sustained the faction's resilience. The tactic required bait, initial pressure to force the repetition of the escape behavior, and an elite, invisible, and lethal force positioned for the ambush at the inflection point of the route, ensuring no valuable target would slip away. But before we dive into the technical and tactical details of this military ambush, we want your opinion. If you understand the necessity of high-impact operations and support the strategic posture of elite forces in reclaiming control of dominated territories, like this video and show your support. The discussion is complex, and therefore, your perspective is crucial. Leave your opinion in the comments about the balance between military tactics and the inherent humanitarian challenges of this type of confrontation. Now, we return to the front line of the containment operation, where the tactical siege began with the primary incursion. The regular forces advanced at dawn, being met with a level of belligerent resistance rarely seen. Blazing barricades, a true rain of bullets, coming from defensive positions, and in a dangerous escalation of violence, the use of drones adapted for launching explosive devices over the troops. Despite the ferocity of the reception, the police lines held firm, breaking the defense with superior firepower and the relentless force of the armored vehicles that paved the advance through the narrow alleys. The criminals, in a desperate and coordinated maneuver, tried to divert the focus of the battle by hijacking buses and blocking major expressways in the city, a clear attempt to spread urban terror and force the security forces to reallocate resources, relieving pressure on the hillsides. However, this terrorist tactic of diversion failed. Public security had anticipated the move and maintained focus on the main incursion, elevating the pressure to the limit. The constant advance of the troops, taking one defense point after another, began to suffocate the internal resistance, making the position untenable for the leaders and most heavily armed groups, who quickly realized the imminent collapse in Complexo da Penha. The mounting pressure forced them to make the only decision they had left, the same one that had guaranteed their survival in all past operations: flee towards the Serra da Misericórdia. This was exactly what the containment operation strategy was waiting for. While the main incursion served as bait and the expulsion engine, the true masterstroke was executed in secret through the shadows. The insertion of BOPE, the Special Police Operations Battalion. These men, whose motto, Faca na Caveira, knife in the skull, is a symbol of victory over death, and whose training is recognized as one of the most brutal and selective in the world, were the central piece of the ambush. They were not on the streets, facing the initial confrontation. They ascended the Serra da Misericórdia via unmapped accesses and secondary paths, positioning themselves silently on the summit of the trail, the exact point where the fugitives would emerge from the jungle in search of safety. BOPE, trained for extreme exhaustion and combat in zero-visibility environments, was there, ready to receive the full impact of the flow of criminals fleeing the pressure from the asphalt, transforming the refuge area into a strategic annihilation point. The criminals' blind trust in the effectiveness of their escape route was their undoing. They hurriedly climbed the slope, carrying their weapons and the certainty that they would find the traditional sanctuary and the safe passage for regrouping in Alemão. However, instead of the expected freedom and empty terrain, they found an elite containment wall. BOPE agents, heavily armed and with tactical knowledge of jungle guerrilla warfare, waited in advantageous positions, forming an impenetrable barrier at the top of the mountain, deliberately placed to receive the most valuable and dangerously armed groups escaping from Penha. The legendary Serra da Misericórdia, the convergence point of all fugitives, ceased to be a path and was converted into a tactical funnel, pushing the flow of men directly into the concentrated and relentless firepower of the special forces, a point of no return that would forever reverse the dynamics of the urban conflict in Rio. The ensuing confrontation was not a quick shootout, but a prolonged, intense, and brutal battle in hostile terrain, with near-zero visibility and dominated by dense, treacherous vegetation. The criminals, many of them using jungle guerrilla tactics and attire, tried to breach BOPE's line of fire at all costs, aware that surrender or a retreat to the police rear were the only alternatives. The deafening sound of gunfire and the muzzle flash of weapons were the only visual references guiding the combatants for hours, in a climate of chaos and despair. BOPE, with its specialized training to maintain discipline under extreme pressure, held the containment position with an iron discipline, ensuring that the flow of fugitives was neutralized surgically and lethally, preventing the crossing of the mountain and dismantling any chance of organized regrouping on the other side. This concentration of combat in a forested area, away from residential centers, though intentional and tactically effective, came at a high cost and culminated in what was recorded as the most lethal episode in Rio de Janeiro's history. The BOPE wall trap transformed the mountain range into the stage where the operation reached its peak of violence and effectiveness. Very few managed to escape that corridor alive, and the final consolidated toll, released by the government, was drastically high, surpassing historical episodes in Brazil, such as the Carandiru massacre, in the number of casualties. The result confirmed that the strategic objective was not merely to expel criminals from one favela to another, but to annihilate their primary survival tactic and crush their capacity to regroup and resist in neighboring territory, ensuring the complete success of the maneuver. The official toll of the containment operation recorded 121 deaths, 117 of whom were neutralized suspects, the vast majority of them in the violent and prolonged confrontation on the Serra da Misericórdia. 4 security agents were also casualties, 2 BOP military police officers and 2 civil police officers, underscoring the high risk and intensity of the battle fought on that hostile terrain. The tactical success of the operation rested on the ingenuity of the double siege tactic. While the incursion in Penha acted as bait, BOPE positioned itself as the hammer, ensuring that the traditional refuge became the point of elimination. The military lesson learned is clear. In urban combat, The mapping and denial of escape routes are as crucial as territorial occupation, demanding planning that transcends mere brute force and incorporates tactical intelligence. The technical analysis of the October 28, 2025, confrontation focused exclusively on the military tactics employed: the use of armored vehicles, the discreet insertion of the special forces, the creation of the deception corridor, and the containment cordon demonstrates a new level of operational capability and strategic planning by Rio de Janeiro's security forces. It was an operation that required impeccable coordination among the various units, emotional detachment, and a discipline of fire that only elite troops, like Bope, are capable of sustaining under conditions of extreme combat. The containment operation not only served its arrest warrants, but also rewrote the public security manual regarding the approach to large, interconnected favelas, teaching an indelible lesson about the consequences of underestimating the intelligence and preparation of the special forces. The enemy this time was lured to the battlefield chosen, and at the time determined by the state.